Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of Instacarhk HK. Today we're reviewing another car from my favorite manufacturer, being this 1981 Ferrari 308 GTB. Now this review comes at a good time, right after our last review of the Dino 246 GTS, because following the Dino, this is the second two-seater sports car that Ferrari made that has a mid-engine with less than 12 cylinders. However, this is the first such Ferrari which is officially branded as a Ferrari. Now the Ferrari 308 has a 3.0 V8 carburetor with 4 twin-stroke Webers with 255 horsepower. Now this engine pretty much came straight out of another Dino, being the Dino 308 GT4. The 308 GT4 came right after the Dino 246 GTS, but it's a bit of a different breed because it is a 2+2, meaning it's a 4-seater, and for once it was designed by design house Bertone. Now, we mentioned in the previous episodes before, Leonardo Fioravanti, renowned Pininfarina designer, designed a lot of these Ferraris, including the Dino and the 308. However, whereas for the Dino 246, Leonardo participated in the design with other designers involved as well, the 308 is a Ferrari that Leonardo designed from scratch since day one. And I think we can all agree that his design had really stood the test of time. Now, Ferrari made the 308 between 1975 to 1985, a long 10-year production period, during which they produced more than 12,000 units. Therefore, for the longest time, the Ferrari 308 was the record holder of Ferrari's best-selling model, a record held only up until the Ferrari 360 Modena, where Ferrari made more than 16,000 units. Now, during the 10-year production, Ferrari made a lot of different variants of the 308. They first started off with the earliest version, being the Vetro Resina, which is the fiberglass body version, between 1975 to 1977. Now, the Vetro Resina version used a similar version engine as this one here. In 1977, Ferrari switched to using steel to make the body, being the steel-bodied 308 GTB. However, in 1980, due to emission regulation changes, Ferrari had to change the engine to being fuel-injected. Unfortunately, the fuel injection change had really affected power output, where from 255 horsepower in this engine, power was decreased to only 211 horsepower for the Euro versions. It was worse for the US versions, where the fuel-injected engine was decreased to 203 horsepower only, being hugely underpowered. Therefore, in 1982, Ferrari decided to do something about it and updated the engine again to a 4-valve per cylinder fuel-injected engine, being a 32-valve engine car. Now this is where the term Quattro Valvole came from, which is the 308 QV. The 308 QV's power output was increased back to about 237, which is still less than this one, but nevertheless adequate. Now, these days, the earliest version, the Vetro Resina fiberglass body version, would be the most collectible and valuable one because of its rarity and low production numbers, where only 808 were ever made. However, aside from that one, collectors have recognized that the most collectible 308 would actually be this steel body early carburetor V8 version, because not only is it the most powerful, it is also the most raw and the most pure 308 made. We can all agree that it is one of the, if not the most iconic Ferrari ever made, being very popular during its days in pop culture, from popular TV shows such as Magnum P.I. to Hollywood movies such as The Hidden. Thank you to the owner for trusting me with the keys and for being so generous. Now, first off, like many Ferraris of this era, there are a bunch of keys for this car, because unlike cars today where one key does everything, old Ferraris, they like different keys for different things. So this one, for example, this triangular one, is for opening, unlocking, and locking the doors. This one is for the glove box, and this one is to start the engine, which is what I'll be using shortly. Now, first thoughts, first of all, the dials and the toggle switches, which I love, are very similar to the Dino 246 we tried last time. However, this is as you can see from the camera, it's actually quite cramped in here. The head space is very little, and it does feel a bit narrow compared to the Dino. But the low head space is kind of expected because my 328 has the same problem. I think the 308, 328 series all have this low head space problem. But otherwise, I can get comfortable in this, but I think for someone of a larger frame, it might be tougher. Anyway, let's start. As mentioned, this is a carb car, so we have to go through the usual carb starting rituals. With this one, I think it's same as the Dino, where you just put your foot down the pedal and then start. Immediately starts in place. Now the engine note, you can immediately hear it's a very barky note. It doesn't sound like your usual V8, American V8 or like the Indy V8 we try. It's very barky. You hear that? Like the Dino, like my 328, it's a dogleg first. So let's go. Everything feels familiar. Like at the end of the day, this car is right between the Dino 246 from our last episode and my very own 328. So it is expected that I would take less time getting used to than other cars we have reviewed before. So yes, the thing that makes it most unfamiliar is actually the size of the cabin. The headspace and everything makes looking around a bit different. But let's start with my favorite topic, the clutch. The clutch is easy to use, no risk of stalling. But for once, it is heavier. It's heavier than the 328, it's heavier than the Dino, but still not so heavy that, wow, it's obstructive to drive. Now, after my last Dino episode, complaining about the Dino's clutch not being heavy, like what I've always been told, or suspecting that I have a strong left leg, I've had some feedback from viewers saying that it's because the classics I've been reviewing are not those very powerful classics, and like your Countach, your Ferrari 512BB, your Testarossa. None of those 300-400 horsepower cars have been tested by me yet. Therefore, I don't know, I haven't tried any heavy clutch classic cars because it is those powerful engines that require heavy clutches. So now I appeal to the public, to all my viewers, if any of you own any powerful 12-cylinder classic Italians, any Miura owners, any Countach owners, Diablo owners, Ferrari BB owners, Testarossa owners, please get in touch. Let me review your car, let me try your clutch, and prove me wrong that I don't have a strong left leg. Now, back to this. Again, as always, and as expected, visibility is great, lots of glass. There's some trait of cars from this era, thin A-pillars, so very good visibility. It obviously sits very low, but everything being more mechanical than electrical, everything feels very connected. The steering wheel, throttle, gear changes, everything feels good, and is how a classic car should be. The best enjoyment of a classic car is the feel, and as mentioned previously, this 308 is considered to be the most raw and purest form of the 308. V10 sounding engine, and even though it's between the Dino 246 and my 328, it sounds different from either of them. So it does not sound like my 328 because it's a carbureted engine, so it actually sounds better than my fuel-injected 328. It's not obvious that it's a V8 immediately, but it's a different, nice sound, obviously, as you have heard just now. And speaking of sound, something very distinctive to the 308 is that the induction. You can actually hear the induction noise because the air induction is actually on the right side of the engine, so on the driver's side. So just now when I change gears, every time I let go of the gas, you can actually hear a sort of air intake noise, which I thought was quite interesting. Something I've heard about before, but never really experienced until this time. Every time I let go of the gas and step on the clutch, there's the noise. Now, for those of you who have been following Instacarhk HK for a while, you should recognize this car that belongs to one of our team members. If you follow his Instagram, @NoFishShark, you should know that this owner has quite a number of nice cars. But this particular Ferrari has sentimental value to him because he actually owned an almost identical 1981 Ferrari 308 GTB back in 1981. He sold it after a few years and since then has been missing his car a lot. So when this example came along a few years ago, he decided he had to have it and he bought it on the spot. Now, unlike @NoFishShark's original 308, this was not an original Hong Kong car. It was actually a UK car that came to Hong Kong a few years ago. Now, when he bought it, the car needed some work, and therefore the car went through a very thorough restoration, including fixing the rust on the bodywork, redoing the entire interior, brand new brakes. Look at these gold brakes, these are all brand new suspension. The engine also went through a whole process of restoration, including new pistons, new valves, new hoses. There's a new air conditioning. So the car, to a certain extent, is probably in better shape than his brand new one back in 1981. Now, when this car came, since it came from the UK, it didn't have all the documents, it didn't have original wheels, but interestingly, he kept the original catalogs and brochures from his own 1981 308 back then. So this is something that this car originally didn't have, but after getting into the hands of NoFishShark, now it's complete with nice catalogs, manuals. Now, just like my 328, Ferraris of this era often have these quirky and mysterious traits. Same goes for this 308. First off, all the records you read online in articles and magazines will tell you that Ferrari has changed from the carbureted 308 engine to fuel injection in 1980. However, this is actually a 1981 car, but it has the carbureted engine. Now, secondly, this car has quad exhaust pipes. But if you look at the bumper, there's only one side which has the indenture for the exhaust pipe. Now this car, aside from the wheels, is all original. And it's also not the first car I've seen which has this single indenture for quad pipes issue. I've seen it in other 308 pictures online before. So again, a mysterious trait, but it still looks okay, it still looks good. Now the thing is, these cars, Ferraris of this era, are all handmade. So the fact of the matter is none of them are the same. Each 308 is unique, just like this one. So if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this car, please give us a like and subscribe, and we'll have more classic car videos coming soon. Thank you.